Hello, YouTube. Welcome back to another episode of MOPETE Interviews. This time on interviews, we have Seth. Seth is a voice actor. He voices numerous voices on my channel, or is going to voice numerous voices on my channel, most notably Goated in the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney review. With him is his producer, Jamal. Today's episode on MOPETE Interviews, I wanted to cover more of the technical side of voice production, and that's why I have a voice actor and a voice producer. Guys, please introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Seth Char, and I'm the director of Cosma Records. It's a boutique-sized record label and also a recording studio, and we are actually broadcasting here from our studio. And this is my friend and colleague and producer, Jamal Mirzashvili.
Hello, guys.
And we're just happy to be here on the MOPETE show within the segment of MOPETE Interviews, and great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So to start off, can you talk a little bit about the actual voice production? How do you make it happen? Say you're on a project, right? MOPETE reviews Indiana Jones, and I give you a script, and now you're in the studio with that script. What happens from there?
Well, before that all starts, how we like to engage with the client is that we like to have a consultation with them first, and during this phase of the work, I think it's very important to really get inside the client's head and really visualize their goals and, most importantly, their expectations for the project. I find that setting reasonable expectations with the client really makes the entire job very smooth, perfect, no hiccups, and without any issues. A lot of the times that we'll meet with clients that don't know what they want, to put it kindly, and that's okay, because part of the service that we offer is that, we bring our experience to the table, and we discuss this with the client, and we help them discover what they want out of the project, what their limits are, and of course within their budget. So beyond that, we take a look at if they have a script available. About half the time, the clients have some kind of rough draft of a script or nothing at all. And again, that's fine, because part of the service that we offer is that we take a look at the client's raw material, and we try to refine it as best we can. I also have a writing background in both business writing and creative writing. So I've corrected many a script in my time, scripts with grammatical issues that are very difficult to read, because what looks good on paper may not necessarily translate to a very pleasurable experience when it's read out loud. And I think a lot of the clients are well-meaning, but a lot of times they bring us this material and it's just may not be necessarily appropriate for their goals that we read it as it is. So getting the script in our hands, we like to talk about the script with the client, prepare it if necessary, and offer to help them out if they need any guidance or pointers with regards to polishing their material. Once we get the written, polished script and work into the studio, the first thing that we think about is microphone selection before engaging in the recording process. And I think this is something that Jamal can comment on as well, because what a lot of people may not understand or may not realize is that the choice of microphone for the specific kind of voiceover that you'll be doing is very important. For example, we're both speaking to you today on two dynamic microphones. I'm using my personal Shure SM7B, and Jamal is using a dynamic Audio-Technica mic. And
fancy.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was commenting, that's pretty fancy. Audio hardware right there.
The letters and the numbers.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And just to kind of follow up on your comment there, it actually can get kind of fancy. It can get very interesting. You can get very passionate about the tools you use, because even though it's just a microphone per se, I mean, it's kind of like a craftsman swinging a hammer. You use the best tool for the job. So we kind of take that approach in the studio as well when we work with clients doing voiceovers.
So the devil is kind of in the details, is what you're saying. Yeah,
it definitely. And I think paying attention to this is quite important early on, because I've been guilty of this before, where I have recorded projects on just the wrong type of microphone for my voice. It doesn't mean it's a bad microphone. It doesn't mean that I necessarily, blew the audition or blew the job, but it was just a bad match. With experience as a voice actor and also as a singer, which I'll get into later on in the interview,
right.
You kind of discover what works for you personally only through a lot of trial and error and through a lot of experience. So it involves testing out a lot of different microphones. We have a handful here in the studio, but whenever we're outside of the studio and working with other singers or musicians or even in different studios, we try to ask our colleagues if we can kind of play around a bit with their toys and see what kind of sounds we can get out of it. So going back to the system that we use and choosing the appropriate type of microphone, there are three main types of microphones. There are the dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, and ribbon mics. As I mentioned before, we're using two dynamic microphones. We love using dynamic microphones. I mean, I personally love them for singing. Coming from a singing background and into voiceover, I've kind of kept that love, for the dynamic microphone, which has gotten me into trouble before with voiceover gigs. And again, I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But Jamal, if you could kind of comment, help me out a bit here, buddy, about dynamic microphones. When we're looking at a client's voiceover project, whether a corporate telephone or voicemail system versus a cartoon, what are the pros and cons, that we see with the dynamic microphone?
You know this. Very many producers, they hate the dynamic mics when they work on the voiceover. Okay, because the dynamic mic, has his own specific voice, and for this job, good to use condenser mic. It's much cleaner and much takes like a natural voice. Now, dynamics takes a natural voice too, but this is hard to produce just voice. Okay, condenser mic works is more easier in this way. Okay, because condenser mic it takes all of it like more smoother than dynamic mic. Okay, dynamic mic has just smaller area to take voice, and this is good for recording because when you just recording voice, this is like came there another sounds something like this. But dynamic mic takes very easy pops, and can in a recording cannot to produce this because cannot fix this. Okay, because pop is we should just this very danger like for recording. But condenser, he has this with pop filter. Okay, he has more clean voice and less pops and more like your full natural voice. Okay, not just pushing from your mouth like this. Okay.
One more thing I wanted to add about dynamic microphones that, again, we're using as an example in this interview. Dynamic microphones are very sensitive in a specific area around the microphone. So, for example, on the Shure SM7B, the area of the proximity area, so to say, is directly in front of the microphone and in some areas to the side. You'll notice that with the SM7B and many other dynamic microphones, the voice actually changes the closer you speak into the microphone, okay?
Oh.
And it also changes the farther you get away. And if you stand too far back from the microphone, you'll not have any strength and maybe even lose your signal.
Huh.
So dynamic microphones, the result that you get from them also strongly depends on your distance from the microphone and your mouth position in front of the microphone or to the side of the mic. This can be a blessing or a curse because with this microphone, when I do voiceovers, I find that my ability to control the sound just from the distance to the mic is it's an additional tool that I like to use in producing a specific tone of voice. With a condenser microphone, as Jamal was mentioning, they don't have this kind of to use the terminology, dynamic effect.
Yes, every mic has this.
But the dynamic microphones have more sensitivity like this, much more sensitivity. So I like that kind of control for me. But it has been a pain in the butt before. For example, when I do characters or cartoons, sometimes I get really into the character, okay? I'm doing a specific voice, and sometimes, I like to have gestures, I like to cock my head, I like to move around, I like to wiggle the shoulders. Sometimes
put some
I like to
character
bounce.
into the voice, I understand.
Exactly, and when you get into it, your head will move, and thus your mouth is attached to your head, so when you have this kind of motion going around, and you're saying one particular line, sometimes the voice can sound more bassy and more smooth and more low when you're close to the mic. But when you get excited and start talking from here or talking from far away, it can completely mess up what you're trying to do. So I find that staying completely still, or at least staying in the position that I want in front of a dynamic type of microphone, is extremely important. I'm not going to say that I am 100% in control of my head the entire time, like like a robot. It's something that I need to pay attention to. It's something that I like paying attention to. But I'm human, and when I really get into things, sometimes I wiggle around, and that has ruined several recording sessions. It has negatively affected others. And, it's just going back to microphone selection, the first part of the answer here. If we need to use a dynamic microphone for a specific job, we need to keep that in mind. I personally like the dynamic microphone for the reasons that I described. It's the control. I find the Shure SM7B is very good for my particular style of voice. Jamal was mentioning before that I have, how do you say it? I have a high Asian voice or something like that.
Whoa.
Yes, and has some more good high frequencies in his voice. Yeah, this is very good.
And what does the Shure SM7B do to my high Asian frequencies?
Yeah, SM7B, your voice more smooth, more like water, like this. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, so everyone we have with own some specific frequencies in our voices, okay? Because people like another mics. Not everyone likes one mic like this, okay? Everyone another mics, because every mic works very another for different voice, okay? Like this. For me, I like Shure SM7B. Yes. Also, I like, yes, of course, Newman.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Newman is
the Cadillac of microphones.
Yes.
The Cadillac of microphones.
Yes.
Should be on the advertising team there, Seth.
Yeah. In this time we have not this mic, but in future maybe we will buy this one.
Very soon. We're saving up some of our shekels in the studio budget, in the studio treasury, to buy some new toys for 2020. Yeah. So exactly. moving into the next type of microphone that we look at when we that we consider when we start looking at doing a client's recording. We move into the condenser mics. We have one condenser mic right now, and it's in the shop getting repaired, ironically. It's an AKG condenser mic, and what I can tell you about my experiences with this type of microphone, I've used several in my time, not only the AKG. I do like condenser microphones in general, but again, it gives a slightly different flavor and tone to my voice. Also, what I love and hate at the same time about condensers is that unlike the dynamic microphones, the condensers have a very wide area to pick up noise. And we found that this 360-degree hypersensitivity. Now, I'm speaking in general, because I know some people watching may say, well, some condenser mics only have a specific area of effect. In general, I'm speaking generally, condenser microphones have a 180-degree to 360-degree area where they can pick up noise.
That is true, yes.
Right. If you are recording in a space that is not perfectly sound treated or not perfectly insulated from the outside, you're going to have issues. Now, I used to record some material with a condenser microphone, and my home is generally quite quiet, but sometimes you have like a dog barking in the street. Sometimes somebody starts up their Yamaha R1 motorcycle in the middle of the night when you're trying to record something. And with a condenser microphone, I mean, my condenser picks up anything and everything. Imagine reading an audiobook 12 minutes in, and you hear a or you hear you hear something like that. You gotta stop, punch and roll, go back, and it really just messes up your concentration. Jamal, you want to also make a comment about condenser mics? Like, what are good about condenser mics and what are bad for voiceover work?
If your room is very quiet, you have very less resonance, okay? Or in your room, not coming another voices from outside, something like this. Condenser mic works very good, but again, this is, you should know what you need, okay? What voice you need to what product you need to do, okay? Something like this. You need some specific voice with some dynamic mic, or you need some like more like art voice, okay? with some condenser mic, something like this. This is your choice, and this is just because very big studios and many studios, they have very many mics. Okay, they don't use just one mic or two mic. They use like 10 another mics or more, 20 like this. Okay, because this life, and life will show us what we need and what we should do for our business, something like this.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to also make a closing statement about microphone selection regarding condenser mics. Condenser mics, again, in general, and in our practice, are very, very sensitive. The level of sensitivity is much higher than a dynamic mic, unless you're speaking very, very close to the dynamic. Having that level of detail can be very useful, for a voiceover project. For example, if you're trying to speak very softly, or you're trying to imitate a very old and sick person, with a lot of vocal fry. Picking up that kind of voice with a condenser mic, I love it. It catches every little nuance of the moment. On the other hand, there are times when I'm reading an audiobook and I'm recovering from a cold or something like that, and I have a single drop of mucus on my vocal cords. And there have been times where I swear the condenser microphone it can hear my voice changing because of that little bit of scratchiness in my throat. Whereas the dynamic microphones, if you keep a very good and neutral position, the dynamic microphones, in my experience, are much more forgiving. So when I'm reading a large project, like let's say reading an audiobook, 50 to 80,000 words, I don't want to be having a condenser microphone, for example, picking up every little smack of the lips, every little mouth noise that I make, every little every little bit of drop of mucus that may or may not be on my vocal cords.
Right. Sounds annoying.
Exactly. It's like there are some projects where I don't feel like dealing with that. So that level of nuance and that level of clarity that the condenser mics have, I don't find it necessary in every single project. And also, going back to what Jamal was saying, that every microphone has its voice. There are studios with a variety of microphones for every task. I find that I like my voice on dynamic microphones. I like my voice on specific condenser microphones in certain situations. But that's just my view on the dynamic versus the condenser debate, and also going back to our decision-making process. Do we reach for the dynamic, like a Shure SM7B? We also have a Shure SM58, and we have a Shure SM58 Beta, which is another animal, altogether. And we also have this Audio-Technica dynamic. So you got to pick the right tool for the job.
I'd like to interject here.
Sure.
But I know we spent more than enough time on microphone selection, but what would you recommend for a newcomer coming into the industry? Like, he's recording in his basement or recording in his closet or whatever. What kind of microphone would you recommend? Would you recommend condenser or a dynamic for them?
Well, I think I'll answer that first, and then I want Jamal to come in, because I think we might have a bit of a divergence of opinion here. But speaking from my experience as a voiceover actor and also as a singer who has recorded 2 albums, I would say that if you're recording from home and you do not have a perfect acoustic situation, which is, in my estimation, again, if you're recording from an apartment and you have neighbors and there are animals outside or cars outside, I would strongly suggest going with a dynamic microphone. With regards to the specific kind of dynamic mic, again, if you're going to be doing only voiceovers, this microphone right here, the Shure SM7B, I mean, I might be biased because it's one of my favorite microphones ever, because it can do anything and it's indestructible. This has been a very good mic for me, even when I was less experienced. I've had this mic for a good long while now. I would recommend a dynamic microphone in an imperfect home recording situation. If you're recording in your closet or in an area where there's a lot of sound dampening, I do believe you can get away with using a condenser mic, but in general, if there was just one choice, I would go with a dynamic mic in that particular situation. Some dynamic mics that beyond the SM7B, there's the RE20, that is also a very good microphone. Yeah. You see this type of microphone used in many radio stations and things like that. Jamal, do you want to kind of come in and also give your thoughts? For somebody who is a beginner at voiceovers and recording from home, what kind of microphone would you recommend as the first microphone for the beginner?
For the beginner, I remember I have my first condenser mic. This was CAD this is very cheap mic, and he has very cold voice. And I bought this because I in this time I was lost, and I don't know what I need like this. And also this price was very cheap, like seven, if I remember good, this was $70 maybe, $70 mic. Yeah, but when I bought this mic, okay, I saw, this mic takes very good instruments, but take badly voices. My voice was like in refrigerator, right? From refrigerator, very cold like this. Okay,
and kind of like an empty metallic voice.
Metallic was like something like this, and I hate this mic for singing like this. After this, I bought. This was very good mic because this is Shure SM70, SM57. SM58, sorry. And this mic, this mic today too use very many stars in the studio. Almost rock stars. They use this mic for recording, and when we hear some very good bands with good recording, sometimes we don't know. We think they use very expensive and very very golden mic, some like $3,000 mic, something like this. But this is not like this. Very many stars, they use just very cheap mics because they need these voices. This needs this tone. Okay, what this mic has like this, and what I can say now. First of all, I will say the guys just buy cheap but good Shure SM58 for singing.
Mm-hmm. And for voiceovers.
For voiceovers, maybe Rode.
The Rode NT1A.
Yeah, maybe.
A condenser microphone.
But with condenser mic,
gotcha.
but with condenser mic, okay, they do some job. They should do some small mic room, something like this, with foams, something. The filter this another voices like this. Okay.
So like a sound cabinet to try to isolate a lot of the outside sound. Yeah.
SM7B, sure, this is very good mic for beginners. Very good mic, not for beginners, for this for everyone. Very good mic, like this. Yeah. And do you know the prices? This is not expensive mics. They're like $300 mics. Is maybe not expensive. If you will do some business, maybe $300 or $400 is maybe not very big money for business. Okay, you should you should buy for this money good mic.
Exactly, but I would say that as a closing statement on this line, MOPETE, you have to get the best microphone that you can afford. That's what it really comes down to. Whether it's dynamic or condenser, you've heard Jamal mention the Rode NT1A. I recommend that microphone as a condenser. But he also followed up by saying, you need a sound cabinet or you need some kind of insulation to shield that microphone from the outside because it is a condenser. But overall,
true, yes.
Not everyone can afford a $400 microphone. We get that. Someone out there cannot afford a $150 microphone. I have seen on Amazon that there are many new microphones coming out in 2019 and heading into 2020. These are USB microphones. They
Snowball?
Exactly. Or like a Samsung USB. Audio-Technica also makes a variant of their condenser mics with a USB interface, and these are under $100. And I've heard, we actually have a client that we worked with recently, and I believe that will be joining us with you in the future on the air. And he gave me a voice sample with his Samsung USB. And you know what? I told him, you need a little bit of sound insulation because with your condenser mic, I can hear your bedroom fan going on in the background. I could actually hear it, even though it wasn't on purpose, obviously, but I could hear it. But the tone and the vocal quality, I said, it's obviously not a $5,000 studio mic,
but it's
for
not
the price,
too bad, right?
For
not
the price, exactly. For the price, I said it was quite good. His voice had a lot of good bassy lows. It had a lot of smooth mids. There wasn't a lot of squeaking in his voice. There wasn't a lot of popping or interference. I thought for the price, it was quite good. So buy the microphone that you can, the best microphone you can get and that you can afford. Jamal mentioned the Rode NT1A. It's about $200 on Amazon now. The Shure SM7B is between $350 and $400. The Shure SM58 is about $80. Although we will both agree the SM58 is not necessarily the best beginner's voiceover mic, but it's a great microphone for singers.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, moral of the story, you got to treat yourself.
Sorry, moral of the story, you have to treat yourself.
You got to treat yourself. If you want to have good quality, you got to treat yourself a little bit. I save up them pennies.
I agree with you, MOPETE, because about having a budget, one of my passions and one of my hobbies is doing recording, whether it be voiceovers or singing. I've always wanted the Shure SM7B for many years, and $400 at the time was just, it was not easily in my budget. But I save $10 here, $20 there. Sometimes I just watch how many times I'm eating out, for example, in a week, and I save that money by cooking something simple at home. And you're right, over time it can be done. And then there comes a time that you have to treat yourself. And you know what? If you are starting off recording from home and you want to get into it as a business, whether you're going to be a Twitch streamer or a YouTube channel host, or you want to be a voiceover actor, or you want to be an announcer or getting into radio, I think having a great microphone within your budget, the best you can get, is an investment in your future. I see this expense, about treating yourself with a microphone. It will pay for itself down the line. If you're working hard at it and developing your skills and treating the microphone as you should, it will pay for itself. It's an investment.
You just got to be careful because certain retail outlets, I'm not going to name names, do have a habit of upcharging for studio mics and USB mics that are a lot more than they're worth. I saw a blue snowball at one of these stores that was going on for $170, and they were acting like that was a deal. So you just got to be kind of careful and do your research though when you're going out and buying these mics.
I would say that I'm not plugging these companies. I don't work for them and they're not paying me. I wish they would, but they don't. Amazon.com has been quite competitive with the microphone pricing, but on top of Amazon, there's a company called Sweetwater. Sweetwater, and also Musician's Friend. Musician's Friend is also quite a fair operator, when it comes to pricing their products. Guitar Center, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, if any of those four companies want to sponsor us, you can contact me at my email, mopetecontact@gmail.com. Thank you. But I think like that is a good enough basis for mic selection. So you selected your mic and you got your script finalized. What next?
We load up our digital audio workstation, or DAW, and we own all of the major workstation software. We have Steinberg Cubase, we have Studio One, we have Pro Tools. Generally, we like to stick with Cubase and Studio One because for us they offer the best workflow and we're used to it. Also, Cubase has a very specific voice. Have you noticed that? Yeah. Some of the workstations actually have a different tone, very, very subtle. Yeah.
This is very strange, but these programs, they all have very different voices, with very different sound, something like this. Very, very strange. This is just cyber, but they are very different. That's very interesting for me.
So to answer your question, like what happens next? We will load up the software, and of course, with the microphone we selected, we get in position. And, it depends on the type of project that we're doing. So I'll just give you an example because there are a lot of the more common projects that run across our desk. I've done a lot of corporate telephone systems. I've done a lot of corporate voicemail systems. With those, we had generally from the consultation with the client, we asked them, okay, what kind of voice do you want doing this? What kind of emotion has to be involved? And please tell us a little bit more about your company. If you have a website, shoot us over your website. Let's read about the history of your company. Recently, we had a company from Long Island, New York. They're in the automotive business. This company has been very well established in their local community. We did look them up with the help of their manager. We found that we wanted to offer a specific kind of voice for their telephone system. We wanted people to feel welcomed and comforted, as if we're inviting them not into an office, but inviting them into a home. This is kind of like a family business. So with the client's need in mind, we kind of thought, okay, well, how would we welcome a guest into our home as if there was a steaming cup of hot chocolate, and some gingerbread cookies waiting for them. If we had this kind of treat waiting for them on our kitchen table, how would we treat a stranger that in our minds is a friend that you just haven't met yet? How would we approach that person? How would we talk to that person? And that's kind of where, we find the voice and we find the style of the reading. So a lot of the determination of the voice comes from the consultation with the client, their needs, their background, their history, what kind of emotion should we be putting into it. Moving on into another type of job beyond the corporate voicemails, I have done cartoons and characters. I rely on the client to be my director. They're basically the director of a production, of a movie, of an audio drama. Many of the clients have a little bit of an idea of what they want. But when I ask them, okay, you're the boss, what kind of direction would you like to give? How should I read for this character? Is there a particular accent that you want me to portray? Half of the clients are very in the mode of, okay, you know what, you have to do it this way, and you have to say this, and you got to roll the R's, in a certain way. And, I don't mind that. They're the director and I'm the actor, and I'm here to receive instructions and take their vision into reality. But what about the other clients that, again, need a little bit of consultation, they need a little bit of advice? And they say, well, Seth, you know what? I kind of have an idea, and here are the character sketches. We always ask for that. We say, you know what? Give us all the information you have on this character that you can. We need, what are their parents' names? What school did they graduate from? What part of the country, if they're from America, what part of the country is this character from? And from there, if they don't have a lot of direction for me, we kind of just do a character study and say, all right, let's draw up, a set of character traits that this person has, this individual has. And all of the actions that in the recording, all of the style, the tone, the voice has to flow from these traits. Otherwise,
as with Zood.
Exactly, at the risk or have the risk of getting out of character, which sounds lame, and the client may not be happy about that. For example, I'll give you a quick example about what I mean about having it flow from the character traits. I had a character recently. I actually had two characters in one audio drama, so I had to change my voice for both, and I was playing a criminal mafia boss, and his name is just Boss. I had to kind of find my inner chest voice, kind of drop the jaw a bit, have a little more schlock in the mouth, talking like this, and trying to get more of the bass out of my chest. Jamal mentioned that in his words, I have the kind of the higher Asian voice, so, no, it's a kind of a running joke around here.
Yeah.
But, he's right. I may not have a high Asian voice, but I am a tenor. I don't have a lot of chest voice. I train as much as I can to bring out and to develop that chest voice, but, at the end of the day, it is what it is. My body is, not going to radically change just because of training. So when voicing the boss, I had to get more into my chest and let the jaw relax a bit and, say, talk more like this. We had a character that the boss orders to be killed, interacting in the same scene. And this guy's name was Leroy. Now, Leroy is a sniveling, nervous, small-time wannabe con man who did some kind of job with the boss, but he ended up screwing it up. He crossed the boss, and it ultimately leads to his demise. With Leroy, I'm thinking, this person should have more of a Boston accent, like back the car kind of thing. The voice should be higher, and again, because I have the high voice, doing the high voices are very easy for me. So I came across and I did the voice like, are you the guy? Or what are you waiting for? Talking like that, carrying more of the voice into my nose, speaking from the nose, pushing from the face. By the way, this speaking from the nose, pushing from the face, I actually learned this in singing training. I didn't learn this in voiceover training. So that's was a nice natural carryover from there into this business. But that's just a quick example that I had recently about voicing multiple characters in the absence of direction. We write down where are the characters from, what are their motivations, what are the traits they have, and then everything that we do, everything that we voice has to flow from those traits. Thirdly, we've been getting into a lot of audiobooks lately, a lot of ebooks. Now, these are called it's called long-form narration. One thing I wanted to note for your audience is that even though I've had a lot of practice, I make mistakes. And, when you're reading something straight for 10 minutes, it doesn't, at the beginning, when you're first starting out doing this kind of job, it seems easy. Okay, I'm going to read a book, I'm going to make it sound good, and I'm going to get paid.
Nah.
But I learned learning the hard way, of course, the school of hard knocks. It's not quite that easy. About 80% of your time doing audiobooks will actually be in the editing phase. Yeah, and Jamal was just, because he does a lot of the editing, for me. A lot of it is fixing mistakes, removing breaths by hand from the track, because a lot of the automated plugins, they don't work very well, and that sometimes they can cut off a word that the plugin thinks is a breath. And when you're doing this on an 80,000 word audiobook, you're kind of paranoid after a time because you're like, oh, where did the plugin screw this up? Should I listen to the entire audiobook 3 times to make sure it didn't mess up? So a lot of times they do the breath removal and the editing by hand.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a ton of work. I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but going back to your question, what happens next in the studio? What happens next does depend on the type of job. Basically, some jobs require very little editing. Cartoons, characters, corporate voicemails, radio jingles, announcements, things like that. Because they're short. I mean, if you screw up saying a 30-second advertisement, it's not the end of the world. But when you're deep into the zone and you're recording for 1 hour straight, for example, and then you make a screw up, and then you tell the producer, or if you're doing it yourself, to do a punch and roll, which means go back, delete your mistake, go back to the part where you read it correctly, let that play in your monitors, and then pick up where you left off. That's a whole another mindset and a whole nother process. I think that might be better to talk about that in a separate section in the interview, because that goes more into editing and more into like production versus performance. Okay, so basically after doing the recording, we take it into the production phase. It's where we add effects, or we add tools such as compressors and EQs. And this is a very critical part of the production process, because a very good engineer with the correct tools, and again, I've had many people agree with me, and I've experienced this even myself. You can have a mediocre performance turned not into a great one, but a very, very good one with a very good engineer. They can cover up a lot of mistakes that you made with your microphone. They can cover up imperfections with your voice. But again, it depends on the skill level of the engineer. Now, if you do know what you're doing with the microphone, if you do have a very clean signal going through your chain, you're speaking clearly, you know how to have a correct position with your microphone, a great engineer can get you Hollywood level, and I use this term a lot. I say Hollywood level. When I say Hollywood level, I'm talking about the stereotypical Hollywood recording studio that charges $250 an hour. I dare say that you cannot, of course, you're not going to match them, by yourself, if you're working from home or if you're in a boutique studio, but you can get close to them. You can trade punches with them if you have a very good, clean recording and you have very, very good production and engineering. So I wanted to kind of get Jamal into this, answer this topic with Jamal's expertise. And Jamal, you remember that voicemail client we had recently, the ones from New York?
Yes.
About the recycling.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. We used a compressor that we previously only used for heavy metal guitar. This compressor.
Yes.
And we used it on this client's job. And the effect actually was quite good. You remember?
Yes.
Can you kind of talk about that? And first of all, talk about what is a compressor and why is it important for voiceover tracks? Why is compression important?
Before I does this job about I talk about the voiceover. For me, this was I think this very easy job. Just record the voice, very easy. Take mic, put in interface, or in preamp sound, and just record a clean voice, and everything will be good. But when first time we does this, record the voice, okay, and we listen this, and we put in first plugin there, okay, we hear very many problems there, and these problems, this is like artists cannot fix these problems. This is not artist bad, okay. This is the natural human moments there. Some mouse
like
noises, yes, some breathing, okay, something, okay, some play moment when the artist is far or near to mic, okay, like this. This should be fixed, just engineer. Yeah, this is just producer job, and this is really hard. This is not like this. This is not 5-minute job, because one phrase in one plugin this hearing good. Another phrase, something's going on there. So, okay, this is not good, and you should fix their volume problem or equalizer problem, the compressor problem, very many problems here. Some voices said about this compressor. This was funny. We use this compressor to to mix a heavy metal song.
yeah, Twilight Nightmare.
Yes.
Twilight Nightmare.
Twilight Nightmare. Yes.
But for this voice, this compressor works very good.
Exactly. Yeah. For this corporate voicemail for this recycling company,
Yeah.
I mean, and MOPETE, I mean, just to explain, what are we talking about when we apply the compressor? What was the result for the client, okay? Why is this important? We have about more than 450 or 500 different plugins and toys at our disposal. We also have the physical analog effects boxes. We have an ART analog compressor box with two Tungsol gold-pinned vacuum tubes in them. We also have an ART microphone preamp. We have a very good Focusrite interface. It's called a Claret. So we have a lot of like physical toys, and we have a lot of software plugins that we use to control the sound and modulate the sound. Why, in this example, what happened in the production phase that was very important? That it was a decision that we made that gave the clients the big results. And it all goes back to having a producer or an engineer, or even if you're a voiceover artist, getting that ear, that producer's ear for yourself through training and experience is very critical, because, I could record a voicemail saying, thank you for calling, XYZ company, the largest automotive company in the state of New York. You could say that, all right? But the client said, we want something with an edge to it. We want something with a bit of... The client described, we want a little bit of fire and a little bit of edginess to the voice, all right? We want something a little bit pizzazzy, a little bit, that kind of feeling. And when you hear the client say, I said, you know what? I actually know exactly what you mean. So give us the contract, of course. Yeah. Let us do the recording. We'll put it into production, and we'll show you, something that we think you will love. So basically what this compressor did is that it took the raw voice and it made it, the type of compression that it did. To try to give you an example, I will try to do it with my natural voice, but again, I'm not a robot or a machine. Yes. But basically, like if you have the line, thank you for calling, okay? Thank you for calling, right? With the compressor, it was like, thank you for calling. You kind of hear a bit of a difference there?
Yeah, I mean, does the compression make it more, makes it sound more right for an answering machine. It's hard to just put it into words exactly.
Isn't that interesting? Where a lot of this work involves very, like, shall we say, abstract, a lot of abstract thinking, a lot of trying to translate the client's desires and their feeling into an actual decision in the studio. It's a great part of the job, but as Jamal was saying, this can be sometimes quite difficult in choosing the correct type of plugin or physical, effects to use. The compressor that we used, what was it? Just to tell the audience that we used for this voicemail. That we used for Twilight Nightmare, and then that we used for the voicemail.
Okay.
That's from our favorite company, T-Rex, remember?
Yeah, black compressor.
Yeah, the T-Rex.
Your favorite compressor.
My favorite compressor, for heavy metal music.
I like this compressor very much.
Yeah.
And always try to use this compressor. Okay, try to use this. Always.
And a lot of times, I want to use it, but we don't use it for music because it's too hard. Sometimes it's very harsh. It makes the music very hard to listen to. But sometimes you want that sound. And now we found a use for this particular type of effect where, we're using it like in corporate announcements where you need that heavily compressed voice, that more intense, more fiery. It's fire in the voice, more of a hot sound. Jamal, from a technical standpoint though, for the audience and MOPETE, what does a compressor do to the waveform? Why does it change the voice? Why does it change the sound? Can you kind of give a brief technical explanation? What is a compressor? What does it do?
How to work compressor, okay? What do the compressor? Compressor, you can do like this. You make high voice more softer and more soft voice more higher, okay?
So if you see the waveform like this, it smashes it down, right?
Yeah. And finally, when you saw the waveform, how this paint, okay, this waveform picture, this is like cube, okay, like cube. But always this is not for good.
So it literally compresses.
Yeah,
the
this
waveform.
is not often is not for good because when you speak, when you talk something, okay. This should be human voice because human talking, not some robot. Okay. And if client will hear some robot voice, okay, he's not will be happy, and he will say no, just cut your contract very easy.
So that's why it's for certain situations like the answering machine and the rock song Twilight Nightmare.
Exactly.
Because
sounds like a bad Iron Maiden cover band.
Yeah, something like this. Yes, and you should keep this human voice, and also voice should be louder, cleaner, and powerful.
Yes.
The sound in voice should be some fire, some interesting.
So the
tone.
voice is more hot.
Yeah, hot.
The flavor is more hot.
Some interesting tone for client.
Right.
Okay? And this is like a very interesting job. This is like you paint something, okay? And finally, you in your mind, you know what you want to do, what you want to paint, but you don't know what will be final result, okay? And this is a very interesting job. And if you will finally do this like this picture in your head, okay, you're very happy like this.
But as you mentioned before, sorry to interrupt, buddy, but too much compression or even compression at all with some jobs can be bad.
Yeah, very bad, yes.
Because there are some situations where the track calls for a very natural, flowing, dynamic voice. The client wants to hear the peaks and the lows. They want that. They don't want the waveform being compressed and smashed down to add a little bit more fire. So
very easy to broken sound.
Exactly.
Very easy.
Right.
Yeah. Where is it?
So going back to the topic, what happens in audio production? In the production phase after we do the raw recording, adding compressors, deciding to use a compressor or not, or if you use a compressor, which one, and if we decide on a compressor, what are the adjustments and the settings that we're going to use? It can be limitless. There's EQs, there's echo, there's reverb, there are certain types of delays, there are chorus type effects that add a double vocal to your speaking voice. Right. This conversation could go on forever, but for the interests of time, we'll use the compressor as an example. That's usually one of the first things we look at when we work on a client's track. How's the compression like? Do we need compression? And if so, what kind of compressor are we going to use? Beyond that, as I mentioned, we had another client, real quick, we had another client that wanted me to read the Bible. So I read a passage from the book of Genesis. In the beginning, starts like that.
Yeah.
We added a little bit of arena sound, a little bit of echo. Right, to give it more of that. I mean, I did not want to be sacrilegious and sound like God. That was not the goal. But to give it more of a boom, the voice more of a booming, a more authoritative, more powerful, and epic voice. Because the Bible, some would say that the Bible is not only a religious text, but it is an adventure story from beginning to end. And we wanted to kind of give that, in the beginning, that kind of
prologue.
Exactly, yeah. And have the Bible read more like a movie trailer as to get people's attention. So anyways, those are just examples of decisions that must be made during production and the types of decisions that we make every day. And the decisions can be very easy or very difficult. It depends on the client's wishes. And again, if how much direction the client gives us, or if the client allows us with free reign, and if the client says, hey, you know what, I trust you guys, you make the decisions and you just let me listen to the result. If I don't like it, just make a little bit of adjustments and we can do it again. So yeah, that basically like...
He's perfect client, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Dream client. Yeah.
Right. And so that's basically the entire process, right? So
in a nutshell, I mean, like I said, I mean, we could split this across like 12 different interviews. I mean, there's just so much detail that can go into it, so many decisions to make. The abridged version, okay, so to say, was that.
So how often would you save your work then at each step? Would you save it? I imagine you'd save it often, right? Just I imagine you saved it often.
We save, like, I mean, as a habit, Control S is like, muscle memory for us by now, because we've had some ugly experiences where we have a power loss and our UPS was not handling it very well. I mean, I'll give you an example. There was a time when we were singing, we were doing what we call a gold recording. It means the final day of recording the lead vocal for a track. It's the day that we want to finish all the singing and we're not going to touch it again unless absolutely necessary. We were doing the gold recording session and the singer was completely in the zone and ready and no mistakes and very good pitch and very good tone. Everything was perfect. And then we had a power loss and our UPS wasn't working. And we forgot to save the singer's beautiful moments on the recording. And when the power eventually came back on and we found that Cubase did not autosave after the singer had the beautiful moments, we had somebody in the studio, as you can imagine, and I don't blame them, being quite irritated, let's say. Yeah.
Very hard.
So after that,
it's never fun.
Yeah, even after that one, even though it was a tragedy, yeah. So Control S is our friend. We save like every time we make a major milestone in the track. For example, reading an audiobook. With every other paragraph, we save the file. Doing corporate voicemails. I mean, these are so short, I mean, we generally just save after the first section, or we just save after the whole thing is done, because they're so short. But when working on long form projects, I think saving religiously is a must.
And that goes out to my future content creators watching this. Definitely save early, save often. If you can, have a hard drive just so you can have a backup of everything. Because I know some computers, their hard drive crashes and you're just SOL at that point. If you have a backup on like a Seagate or just any kind of external hard drive, it can help a lot in the case of a catastrophe. You know what I mean? A calamity.
Catastrophic event. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And just to add what you said, MOPETE, about once a week, we do have the habit of backing up all of our client projects and our personal projects onto an external hard drive, a USB 3 hard drive.
Yep. See, that'll do it. Even a USB 3 hard drive. It doesn't have to be something that fancy. Just something that can hold all that information.
The peace of mind. It's just worth the peace of mind at the end of the day, because you don't want to lose your life's work in just one freak.
You'll be happy when you have to use it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So for the last section of this interview, I kind of wanted you guys to talk about the transition from doing music work to doing voice work. Because I know initially you started out doing music work and your studio is devoted to music work, or it was built in mind with music work.
Correct.
Music work as the main purpose. So how was that transition for you?
Well, MOPETE, this is going to be probably our favorite part of the interview. So,
Save the best for last.
We'll try to, exactly. Thank you for that. We'll try to contain our excitement. But, in the pre-show, MOPETE, as I was explaining to you, Jamal and I actually began recording as musicians. We did not begin recording as voiceover artists or as radio people even. Now, I have roughly, about 12 years of experience doing corporate voiceovers and announcements because of my previous experiences in the corporate world. So I do have some voiceover experience, but I wasn't doing it like in a professional studio and not doing it full time. I was always doing voiceovers for my boss or for the company, It wasn't for private clients or for individual contracts, So the transition from being a singer-songwriter into a voiceover artist, I want to talk about that first. when I first got into doing voiceovers professionally and for a living. I was a singer, and I still am, but I was only a singer, and I was quite arrogant in looking at the voiceover business, wrongly so, as I learned later on. I thought that I can hit a C5 note as a male, and my vocal range goes up to G5.
Wow.
And
can you explain that for our non-musicians here?
Well, basically, the male high C is C5, which is the high C on a piano. And the high G is the G above that C, okay? So it's several steps even above that. Generally, and Jamal, I know you're smirking over there. What is hitting a C5, the male high C, is that difficult for most people? Because most men are a baritone.
No. For tenors too, this is a C5 very high note. For men, this is like not easy, okay? To take the C5. Tenors, they took easy like A4, okay, like B flat, 4, B, C5. Like not all tenors take this note.
Yeah, so it's a pretty high note, but and I will say I only developed that range through years of training. When I was first starting out as a singer, I could barely speak. I could barely sing higher than my speaking voice, which is not very high, but also not very low, but my speaking voice doesn't have a lot of range to it. But anyways, getting into the transition point and why I was so self-confident and why that was wrong. I thought, I have a high range. I hit very big technical moments in my songs. I've sung a lot of power metal and symphonic metal. I've sung heavy metal. I've done nu metal. I've done modern rock. I've done reggae and pop. I've done a lot of different genres, right? So I was like, my voice can make many different sounds. My range, I can make high noises and I can make low noises. About talking, I like speaking. I know how to talk. So why not just talk into a microphone, have it recorded on some $30 piece of software, and charging $250 an hour for that? Why not? And of course, when we first started getting commercial clients, with the contracts and charging real money for this, yeah, that kind of like fantasy was shattered like glass in front of my eyes. First of all, what about the transition was just not so natural? Reading somebody else's material, reading it out loud, it's not something that I'm in the habit of doing. It's not something that I've been doing for any length of time in my life. When I like to read something, whether it be nonfiction or fiction, I read to myself silently. How many people are staying awake in their bed before passing out and, is reading some, like The Tale of Two Cities? It was the best of times, the best of times or the worst of times, right? Who reads that out loud in bed? Usually when we read to ourselves, right? Silently in your mind. So reading someone else's material out loud during an extended period of time, controlling when you have to take a breath so that you don't run out of air for the next phrase, and so that you don't make a mistake, screw up, and having to stop the recording or go back, that is quite a challenge. It's a habit that has to be formed. I was just telling Jamal the other day that when I first started out, I would embarrass myself by getting physically tired in the studio reading one page of a YouTube script for a client. For example, the top 10 anime villains of 2019. Hey everybody, and welcome to the channel. Reading one page of that, I would get physically exhausted.
Yeah.
And that's embarrassing because, I'm supposed to be this hotshot singer. I trained for years. I'm a badass. No, you're not a badass. I'm not a badass. No one's a badass, right? No one is a badass. Nobody can be a badass when you get physically out of breath reading one piece of paper. Okay? I don't see how anybody can be in a badass mode after having that kind of shame. But that was what it was like. And you know what? I'm very athletic. I go to the gym sometimes every day, between 5 and 7 days a week. I do a lot of powerlifting.
Hey.
Sorry.
I was saying A. I was nodding with you. I was like,
Oh,
yeah,
hey,
same,
okay,
same
all
brother.
right. Well, no, I mean, I was just telling you, MOPETE, why am I telling you about going to the gym? Because I don't know why I can survive a very heavy load and program in my gym. You know, I do a lot of tabata, I do a lot of high intensity exercises, I do a lot of powerlifting, and
Whoa,
and
wow,
yeah, and you know
okay.
what? Yeah, but you know what? How can I do this at the gym and barely break a sweat in the first half of my workout? And then I get physically tired and panting after reading one page of a YouTube script about anime. You know what I mean?
It's a different side of the house, you know?
Exactly, because I'm not I wasn't trained for this. I wasn't in my habit. You know, I didn't go to, in high school and college. I wasn't reading my textbook out loud. You know, I was reading it by myself. So, giving you that example, I mean, getting physically exhausted quickly, where we had to stop the job, okay, and lose time. This was something that I was encountering in the beginning when I was making the transition from singer to voiceover artist. Another thing as well, I know we talked too much about microphones, and as we said during the break, Jamal and I are gear junkies, so sorry for having that huge tangent about microphone selection. But
Hey, it's all right.
yeah, but I won't go on and on about that right now because we've already covered it. But I just want to bring back the whole microphone thing just one more time briefly. Because
Here we go, guys.
here we go again, guys. But I promise to keep it shorter than 45 minutes this time. When I was first starting out, I was singing mostly with dynamic microphones. And you know, you remember at the beginning of this interview, we spoke about the differences between the dynamic microphones and the condensers, and even ribbons, but ribbons is for another interview. I love dynamic mics because I'm like, you know what, with my voice, it's the best. And you know, I sing a lot of rock and metal mostly. So I want that punch, I want that overload, I want that kind of driving sound. And also, I have a lot of high frequencies in my voice. I want to control those and take those down a little bit. So the dynamic mics that we've been using, like the Shure SM58 Beta and the SM7B, are great for this application. Lots of punch, lots of hard S's, lots of hard T's and P's and does. You know, you want those hard attack moments when you're singing a bridge in rock, okay, or even metal. But you know what? I found that me just speaking into a microphone with the habit of accentuating my t's and all my consonants actually, that has been a serious liability for me as a voiceover artist, especially using my dynamic microphones. Because these dynamic microphones, when you're close up to them, I mean, they pick up everything, and they pick up a lot of the consonants, a lot of the hard noises. So a lot of the p, you have a huge p, it sounds like a crash and a boom in a dynamic microphone up close, all right? And of course, you know, no client is going to be paying you to hear that kind of garbage on their track. So my habit of being a singer, being relatively close to the microphone, accentuating my consonants, being free with them, not worrying at all about controlling my mouth, all right? That was my habit as a singer. I mean, what I mean is controlling my mouth in that, you know, I was controlling it to get the notes out, but I was not controlling my lip smacking. Okay, I was not controlling my slurping. I was not controlling my, what else is there? My teeing. You know, when I do a tease, I like to do a t. I like to accentuate that. I was not controlling that at all as a singer because I didn't need to, and quite frankly, I want those hard moments in a rock song. I use those moments. Okay, those are my moments.
But in voice acting,
exactly,
it's all about control.
It's all about control, and you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
When you're coming from having years of habit as a singer with a specific type of microphone, your favorite microphone, and then you need to treat, you know, previously when you're abusing this microphone, when you're screaming into it, you're shouting into it, you're wailing into it, you're coming from those kinds of habits into an industry where you need to erase 80% of what you've been doing with a microphone for the past 5 years. Now imagine trying to do that.
It's like switching from automatic to manual when you're driving a car.
Exactly. When I first started to learn the stick shift, I was trained originally on an automatic. And you're right, you know, getting that left foot down onto the clutch and learning how to release it gently, you know, after you shift the gear.
That's undoing years of, normally of driving a car on,
Yeah, you're right, because when you're driving automatic, I mean, not to take the example too far, but when you're driving an automatic, the left leg...
You're slamming that foot down.
Exactly, and that left leg, what is it doing? It's not pumping a clutch, it's not depressing a clutch pedal, it's just chilling out.
It's just resting, really.
Exactly. And what's the right hand doing? Usually on the 3 o'clock?
Yeah,
right.
Maybe at the radio,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So those are just some examples that come to mind, which made the transition from singer to voiceover artist quite challenging, frustrating, and difficult. Quite frankly, quite difficult. Jamal, did you want to kind of?
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. So I'll move in.
He's just easing it for the ride.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I do want to get Jamal's input on this because he's actually been doing music even longer than I have, and I wanted him to get into that.
Right.
Kind of just to close out that area of the conversation. Those were the disadvantages, and it was the learning curve, a very big learning curve for me. And you know what? I think that somebody who would be approaching the microphone as just a voiceover actor without these years of, I wouldn't say bad habits, but different habits, they potentially would have an easier time. Just my opinion. Now, on the flip side though, what are 1 or 2 points where I thought being a singer gave me huge advantages of being a voiceover artist? Well, first of all, I know my way around a studio. So earlier we talked about production and choosing the compressor. A lot of the discoveries and the decisions that we made to benefit our clients, to make those quick decisions on the fly, to really understand the client, what kind of feeling and tone they want from the voiceover. Understanding the feeling of sound and tones and heat and hot and cold. A lot of that comes from music, because music is very emotional. And, when you're thinking, I like the tempo of a track. I like how it drives. But about the singer's tone, I don't like the singer's tone. The singer is not doing anything wrong. They just have the wrong tone for this song. I'm not feeling it. Maybe they need to be singing more in their mixed voice. Maybe they need to be singing more in their chest voice. Or maybe they have to stop singing the high notes and falsetto. I think the experience of being around a studio and knowing the emotions of sound, knowing the emotions and the feelings of music, it translates well over into voiceover, especially when you're doing things like cartoons and characters. How are people feeling? How are characters feeling? Well, when you're writing a song, when you're writing the lyrics of a song, when you're discovering the vocal melody, when you're doing the instruments, we're asking those questions to ourselves every minute when we're writing a song. If we're writing a song about love and loss, how is this person feeling? Is the singer a male or a female? Is the story not in the first person point of view, okay, but in the third person point of view, talking about someone else? Where are those people coming from emotionally? And I think that kind of experience really helps us with understanding what clients want. And if they are a creative client and they want something about characters or tunes or whatnot, we can kind of engage with the client much more easier because of our experience with that. And also, as I said before, we used a black compressor that we used for a heavy metal song called Twilight Nightmare. I told Jamal over here, I said, you know what? I'm not liking the tone of this voicemail. I don't think this is what the client wants. Let's try to use my favorite plugin because I know what it did for the heavy metal song and made everything very sizzling. Why don't we use it here? And that's how we got to that decision. It was all with experience and history. We would never have those kinds of skills to make these decisions if it were not for the experiences of working in a studio as musicians. Okay, so that's just one example where it strongly benefited us. Also, a lot of it comes down to learning how to use the software and learning how to use microphones. And again, I'm not going to go into another microphone tangent, but I'm just saying, for example, not for a third time, don't worry. But when you are a singer, looking at condenser mics and dynamic mics, I mean, the decision on what to buy, okay, for example, what to buy for the studio or to buy for yourself if you're recording at home, the decisions for ours did not require, the decision for us did not require hours of Google research or interviewing people. We knew exactly what kind of microphones to buy for voiceovers.
You had the prerequisite knowledge already.
Exactly. It's the technical knowledge that came from being musicians that carried over very well into voiceover. About this type of software to use, Cubase, Studio One, Pro Tools. I mean, we know this software like the back of our hands. What's that? Oh, okay. I thought it was an earthquake.
I was like, oh, wow.
No, we're okay.
Oh, no.
The roof is not going to cave in anytime soon. the knowledge about how to edit tracks, on how to use plugins and whatnot. So on the software side, I mean, that is basically a direct rollover into voiceover. I mean, we use a lot of the same software for voiceovers as we do with music. Microphone selection, that's a given. We're absolutely very comfortable with handling microphones, buying microphones, choosing which ones to use. And also about physical effects, such as microphone preamps and physical tube-based compressors. We use that a lot in rock music, these tools. And you know what? We found that I don't think they're absolutely die-hard necessary in a voiceover studio, but they're good toys to have because they've given us a lot of different sounds that we share with clients. And if we didn't have those, I think the clients would just not have the same variation and not have the same opportunities.
It sets you apart too. Like
exactly.
You said, what 90%? You said probably less than 90% of most, or more than 90% of most voice actors are coming into the industry fresh and not having that music background. Puts you at an advantage too.
I would say that a large, I mean, again, I haven't met everyone on the planet, but we do network a lot.
Of course.
Yeah, we do network with a lot of studios and we network with a lot of other voice actors. And I've met a lot of very, very talented voiceover artists, and I would say way more experienced than me even, that they've been in this business all their lives. They're fantastic at voice, but they have never sung a tune before on a recording ever. That does not take away from them being a great voiceover actor. I will say that right now. That does not take away anything from them. However, I would say that for us, it gives us a little bit more of a different mindset, a different position, a different view. If a client also has a music background, right? If they're like, you know what, I'm doing this, I want you to do this voiceover, but I want you to really not get out of control with the compression. Then we say, oh, this person either has a music background or maybe they have a engineering or production background, or of course they could be a voiceover artist with a studio background. But if they are a voiceover artist, why are they talking to me? You know what I mean? Usually they, they have a colleague closer to them than me, or they can do it themselves. Yeah, having this technical knowledge from the music business just does carry over. Having a lot of the microphone handling skills, et cetera, carries over. Jamal, I mean, off the top of my head, what advantages do you think we have? What are the special things we can offer our clients as voiceover artists? Because due to the fact that we were musicians beforehand, because we're both singers. I was straight singer. You're also an instrumentalist and a producer. I mean, what makes us different as musicians when we're doing this business?
This is for me this is very different. Very different. To work with voiceover. Very different. I remember this first recording when we do first job with first client. We just watch each other like and say, man, this is not easy.
Yeah.
This is not easy. How we think before like this. Yeah, really, this is real. For me, this is our art too, because I'm working like in music.
What are the benefits and what are the special things? Why is it good? I guess the question is, why is it good?
Very good.
We are musicians also. Why is it good?
Because we know we know technical moments. Okay, we know very well how to do good recording.
Yeah, how to do a good recording. Yeah,
this is special.
The prerequisite knowledge.
We know how to build a studio, how to make studio quiet. Okay,
insulation, and sound dampening, right?
Yeah, this is very good this start not was hard for us. Because we just before in music everything, just harder the job needs another way to do perfyectly.
Okay? Exactly, another mindset too.
Yeah. No, this was a little bit surprise for us, not more. Everything was very natural for us because recording is you should recording like. Recording music like this, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one more thing I wanted to mention, MOPETE, about while we're on this topic. As musicians, we have our own biases and our own experiences from music that carry over into voiceover, which I believe doesn't give us like a huge advantage over the competition per se. What it does is sets us apart in how. We've had discussions with other studios before who only do voiceovers, okay? No music. And we've gotten into like very heated debates. Still friendly, but quite intense, because a lot of them, like, they don't like using dynamic microphones. A lot of the studios we talked to, not all of them, but I would say a majority of them said, we like the Neumann U87. We only like this microphone. It's a $3,000 condenser mic. And I said, well, I came from singing, and I'm very comfortable with my Shure SM7B. The Shure SM7B, right? And there it goes. Those are fighting. No, he didn't. Those are fighting words. Those are fighting words, son. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And I would tell him, this microphone was the same microphone that the older version, the SM7, the same microphone that Michael Jackson used to record Thriller. This was the same microphone used by Willie Nelson in many of his recordings. This is the same microphone used by a very popular metalcore band and deathcore band called Ginger out of Ukraine. Very popular band in Europe. They have recorded in studio with the same microphone the Joe Rogan podcast, with millions of listeners. Joe Rogan himself uses the SM7B for spoken word. So we have these arguments a lot with other studios and other producers. And you know what? Because we've had such great experiences with these kinds of mics that are great for singing, but maybe in some cases, maybe not the best choice for voiceover. We have these arguments with other people. And again, I would say they're arguments. They're like friendly,
healthy debates.
Friendly professional debate. A lot of them say, the SM7B is a horrible microphone. It's very muddy. That the sound is crap. You have a lot of bad proximity effect if the voiceover artist is moving around. We would counter by showing them. We just recorded a song called "Enemies," and me and Jamal just listened to the raw vocal with the SM7B. Okay, and I want to tell anybody who hears that raw vocal track recorded with this microphone, please tell me that this is a garbage microphone after listening to that track.
Wow, yeah.
Right, but
vote
then...
today, guys, condenser or dynamic, vote in the comments.
Exactly, but again, people will come back and say, but you are showing a vocal track that is singing, not speaking. Mm-hmm. So we have, again, we bring our biases and we bring our positive experiences of music into the debate. And I think it's healthy because, with a lot of other studios, we challenge what they're thinking and we show them some of the recordings we're making with other types of microphones that are like, we don't have a Neumann U87, but we show them recordings we make with our other mics here. And they're like, you know what, this sounds damn good. That sounds damn good. And maybe I have to rethink my opinion about Shure dynamic microphones, for example. I wanted to say one more thing. The most important thing why I feel it's great to be a musician and coming into voiceover artistry is that we can make original music for clients. There are so many clients. You see, there are so many clients that say, you know what, Seth, I want to get into YouTube. I have a new product that I'm drop shipping from Asia, or I have a new product that I'm making in the USA and I want to distribute it. I want to make Facebook video ads. And they say, Seth, can you do the voiceover? I say, of course, it will be my pleasure. And they're like, yeah, but we also need music and we're going to buy this generic corporate jingle, royalty free. And I said, you know what? Why buy that? When you can have you can do it all in-house with us for just a few dollars more. You can have a completely original song hand-composed for you for the specific product or service you're trying to sell. We will do the track by hand. It's not going to break the budget. It's going to be just a few bucks more. It'll be the rights of the music will be transferred to you. Full commercial use, unlimited use, royalty-free, of course. And much more tailored. The music will be tailored to the type of feeling that you want to portray in your advertising. So we offer an all-in-one in-house solution, not just voiceover artistry. We also do original music, and also, of course, because we're singers and instrumentalists, sometimes people contact us for corporate jingles, with a little like do-do-do-do-do, something like that, right? And being a singer, doing that kind of singing is very easy. So we tell them, okay, it will not break the budget for us to do this for you. And on top of that, if you want some spoken word following that little jingle or rhyme, we're here. You do it all in-house, you save time, you potentially save money, and also it's easier to manage because you have one point of contact. That's either me or Jamal. You have one person managing the entire audio project in the studio, one person controlling the voiceover actors, one person controlling the production of the music, one person or two people, me and Jamal, writing the music, okay, and deploying it. So if something goes wrong, or if you have a question or a concern, or if you have praise, there is just one point of contact rather than you having to manage 3 or 4 different contractors or freelancers. So how much is your time worth? How much is it worth getting aggravated because you have 3 freelancers doing something right, one freelancer not doing it correctly or falling behind on schedule, and the other 3 freelancers are waiting, and you can't do your Facebook advertising because of that. So I'm a big believer in hiring one house or one agency to do everything for me as much as they can while keeping things in my budget. I mean, that's just me as a business person, but we also have many clients that kind of appreciate that as well. So I guess that's the most important point that I wanted to make in this section, is that being musicians, okay, yes, there are some benefits and pros and cons of moving into being a voiceover actor. What is the big benefit though? If a client wants music also or singing, we're here and we know this job very well.
Apart that much more, yeah.
Exactly. So offering more services in the same house. What do you think about that, Jamal? Yeah. In fact, Jamal, we did remember for that diet company.
Yes, I remember.
The weight loss company, and we gave them the music as well.
Yes.
Yeah, da 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 da. Yeah, it was very nice.
Oh, don't serenade my audience now. Whoa.
Yeah, I'll try not to. This is our first interview after all, so I'll try not to break out any moves here.
Oh, you're doing great though. You're doing great. This is your first interview. Wow, it seems like you've been doing podcasts like these for years. But okay,
I appreciate that. To be frank with you, MOPETE, I was stuttering a bit, and still am stuttering and stammering a bit during this interview because I was a little bit nervous being interviewed by a YouTube great like yourself.
Oh, you're gonna give me diabetes? Come on, that's too sweet. But yeah, you guys been doing great. So. Would you have anything to say to round up this interview? I feel like we covered all of our bases here as far as the technical aspect of production in a studio, as well as transitioning from music to voice work. Do you have any last bullet points or any summations that you'd like to add in?
Well, before the conclusion, I want to also remind all the companies we plugged in this interview, all of you corporate guys. You owe me some royalty checks, you owe me some money for what we've done today. I think, especially Shure Company, the Shure microphone company, we have plugged your product so much in this 1 hour because we're gear junkies that I think we're going to take this interview and show it to Shure.
Do you hear? Sure.
Yeah, hey, sure.
Go and have them cut a check my way too. Just,
exactly.
Wins due. So
spread the wealth. Spread it around. Spread it around good. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I mean, Jamal, do you have any kind of closing comments, any final ideas for MOPETE?
For MOPETE, say thank you for nice talking. Thank you for interview. Yeah. Wish you
thanks, Jamal.
Merry Christmas,
I appreciate
man.
you coming on, dude. You rock. But the man behind the curtain right there, Jamal, he's the most important person. It wouldn't happen without him.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you two for heading on. We're going to go ahead and round this out here. Thank you for everyone to listening. Thank you for our lovely Patreon, Lily McCutcheon. If you like Seth and Jamal, check them out over at Chasma Records. They have a YouTube channel, Chasma Records, and they also have a site, chasmarecords.com. They're open to commissions, obviously. Pick them up. They're awesome, like we've discussed in this 2-hour video. So check them out. Thank you for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, leave a like, discuss in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe. I'll see y'all later, and I'll see y'all in the next interview. MOPETE out.